All right, we're on the show now. It's okay. This is live TV. It's me, Hugh, downtown Toronto, coming live. Lauren Ashman is back on the show as my co-host,
yes.
At least right
Hello,
now.
Hugh.
Hi, Laura. It's great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I forgot to show you your painting's hanging in the hallway.
Oh,
the
fantastic.
one that I won at your event.
Good. Thank you.
So I'm going to show you after we
Thank you.
get finished here. But we've got my Dr. Michael Irving joining us on the show. And great to see you again, Michael.
Great to see you again. I was thinking, one of the things I really liked about being here last time was the artwork, the paintings that you had on the wall. You had great paintings.
Yeah.
But that's great.
We still have some paintings. I've got Laura's painting.
Yeah,
I'll
you've
show
got
it
Laura's
to you
painting.
afterwards.
Please.
But we just kind of cleaned the place up a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we might get some paintings
I love
back.
the new studio. It's great.
Well, it's great to show it to you.
Yeah.
And great to have you here. And now we're talking today about chronic pain, and you got this book coming out, right? Retrain Your Brain to End Chronic Pain.
Right.
That sounds like a great little rap lyric.
It is a great rap lyric. It's fascinating, the idea that you can actually experience pain in your brain as opposed to an injury in the body, and that you can retrain that. That's what's so fascinating.
Well, that's so funny that we were just our last guests, and who I guess you were speaking with in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Like, there's a real synchronicity as usual.
It's happening around the globe. We just finished the decade of the brain, and we're really realizing so much about how the brain. If you were to practice piano all day long, after a year, you wouldn't have to be at the piano to hear the music. Your brain learns the music, and you'll be having coffee with someone, and your fingers will be playing the piano, even though you don't have a piano there. So you train yourself to hear the music and to make the movements.
That's how Beethoven was able to write those symphonies after he went deaf.
Totally. Mm-hmm. And the same thing happens with chronic pain. If you've got pain from an injury, your mind will think about, before you pick up the groceries, you'll actually feel some pain to protect yourself. It's a good response.
Wait, when? How?
If you hurt your back, if you fell and you hurt your back,
right,
then for the next 6 months you're in some real pain from the physical injury.
Yeah.
Every time you go to do something, before you actually do it, your mind will remind you, you've got a back injury, don't lift those backs up. Okay? So 80% of people who have long-term chronic pain who see somebody across the cafeteria lift up a big crate of milk will experience back pain themselves, even though they haven't moved and they haven't lifted something up, because their brain learned to have pain to protect themselves. The same way the piano player learns to hear the music. So for 30 years, I worked with PTSD, and we took people who had physical pain, or we call it somatic pain, from a traumatic incident. And we developed the skills to heal that, to recover from it, to erase it. 30 years ago, PTSD was written up frequently as something that a person had to live. It's a disease. They were going to live with it the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. They had to learn to accept it and to cope with it, to manage it. Mm-hmm. Today, if you see good clinicians working with PTSD, they'll say, "We can help you get through this." You may have a rough
get
time.
over it.
Get over it. Literally stop having flashbacks and nightmares. Mm-hmm. So currently, a lot of the medical literature calls chronic pain a disease, suggests that you have to learn that you'll have it the rest of your life, and that you have to learn to live with it. But I got a job in a neuro rehab clinic, walked in the door, my tool bag was the PTSD skills that I'd been using for 30 years. And I walked in the clinic to work with the depression and the anxiety, and then the PTSD from people, they had the neuro injury because a ceiling fell on them or they had a car accident. Very quickly, the PTSD tools work to reverse or to end people's chronic pain. Sometimes I've had people who've had 7 years of chronic pain and who, after a couple of weeks, the pain reduced. In a month, it was completely gone.
So this is taking the same set of tools that was effective with PTSD, and you're
And
just
applying
applying
those-
it to chronic pain.
and adapting it to chronic pain. So if you picture your pain and getting smaller and smaller and further away, that's a visualization. If you to look at a positive picture or think of a positive, something positive in life, 95% fewer brain cells fire in the brain centers of the brain. So that's why I say the year, we just finished the year of the decade of the brain, that the brain scans showed us that if you had a low back injury, a part of your brain associated with the low back was firing. 6 months later, that area was not firing because the back wasn't injured, but the frontal cortex and those places of the brain that were holding this story of don't pick up the milk or you're gonna hurt yourself, they're firing.
Okay.
So now that helped us to understand that pain could truly be mind-based, that it could be brain-based. And so my first experience was seeing everybody change and then scratching my head and saying, why is this happening? And then around the same time, the brain scans with MRIs were showing these differences and gave a rationale, an explanation why the success was so great.
Well, and Laura, jump in here anytime.
Yes.
But I'm thinking a couple of things here.
Yeah,
First
yeah,
of
yeah,
all,
please.
Pain is a feedback mechanism for us. It actually helps us.
Pain
right?
is good. If you've got an injury, it protects you from re-injuring. It gives you some time to heal. But when you learn pain, then that's negative neuroplasticity. It's
Right.
negative learning.
Okay.
And so we do positive learning, which is how do you learn to see yourself? You got to change your mindset. If you're really pessimistic, you've got to change the mindset.
Yeah.
If you're miserable, you're probably, there's a difference between pain and suffering. So if you're suffering, you're probably regretting the past or dreading the future. Mm-hmm. 3 ways to get out of suffering. Change the stories, the regret and dread stories. Be in the present moment, because regret is the past and dread is the future. And be here now. So though that changes the suffering. If you take suffering out of physical pain, the body will heal. And if the pain is brain-based, that helps to heal it. The other is giving meaning. In World War I, it took about half the amount of morphine as it took in World War II to deal with an amputation or an injury on the battlefield. There was more meaning to why the people were there. In Afghanistan, in Vietnam, it was taking... So the amount of painkillers that it took was half in World War I.
Yeah.
It was like, it took like 4 or 6 times more in Vietnam and 10 times more in Afghanistan. Because when you have meaning to an event, to an adversity, when you have meaning, there are areas of the brain that fire, that reduce the pain, that take the suffering away.
But why was there so much more meaning?
Because people thought in World War I that they were going to end all wars. And in World War II, they were scratching their head and saying, well, we're kind of stuck here, but at least we're doing something. And in Vietnam, there was no bloody meaning. And the same way with Afghanistan. You know, so many guys that are there saying, what the heck am I here?
What are we doing
so
here?
They actually feel more pain. I had an experience this spring. I was working on a garden for my daughter and putting up a garden fence. And I had an electric drill, and I shoved the drill into my finger very painfully.
Ouch. I'm feeling that pain right now.
The neuroplasticity. And I said to myself, I really love doing things for my kids and my grandkids. I just love, it's one of my enjoyments in life. So I said, this here, I'm taking care of her garden, and the pain vanished like that.
Oh, yeah.
It was so cool to experience because I've been training in this and I have all of the theories. But there was an example for me of how it worked, just like that.
Okay.
And may I jump in with an experience that I had an experience where I thought I had cut my finger a number of years ago, and I thought I had drawn blood on my index finger.
Yeah.
And in the moment that I realized it was strawberry jam, from my breakfast.
Whoa.
I went from the meaning attached to, oh my gosh, I'm bleeding, to, oh my goodness, this is just strawberry jam.
Right.
So it put me into a kind of a humorous, funny, different meaning state about the strawberry jam. And then I exited from adding pain to my finger into my being. I kind of caught myself before my brain sent the message of pain.
And have you used that with others?
I've shared that with children.
Yeah.
If a little kid falls down, I'll say, okay, quickly before your brain tells you to say ouchie and start crying, why don't you imagine you're being tickled? Or why don't you imagine seeing your favorite friend right now before you start expressing pain? And it worked with a toddler.
So what we know is two things. We know is one is that when you think something positive, look at a positive picture or think a positive visualization going to the beach, you 95% fewer brain cells fire in the pain center. That's one. And the other is that it's meaning, that you have meaning now to the whole experience of what an injury and how you help other people. Everybody who's been through chronic pain and has had an injury, has faced an adversity, there's a lesson, an opportunity, there's a gift in it, and that is the meaning and purpose. And when you find that, then the chronic pain reduces. So that's the other mindset thing.
And may I jump in and ask you a bit about you and your past? Because you are such an expert in the field of PSTD and anxiety, depression counseling. You're a PhD in psychology. But would you like to speak a little bit about what led you to wanting to help others? What was your history all about?
I was badly abused when I was younger. Everything from being badly beaten, tied up, electric shocked, just really, really used in the child sex trade. So there was a lot of brutal, sadistic stuff that was done. So I had flashbacks of the feelings of ropes around my wrists or beatings to my face or different kinds of, the electric shock flashbacks would just be like I was sticking my finger in an electric plug, even though that was 20, 30 years earlier. So I had to learn how skills to reduce that and to eradicate that. So when I was in my 30s, my wife and I we changed the sheets 3 times a night because I just sweat so much with the flashbacks and the nightmares. That hasn't happened for years now, for years and years. So one, I had to learn to fix my own self, and then I just did a lot of training and a lot of workshops, wearing 2 hats. One, figuring out how to use this stuff for myself and getting really skilled at it. And then also with my clinical work, very often my internships and my work, I would get referrals to people from other therapists. They knew my story and they thought that I could help their clients that had been through a really, really tough time. So those were the skills that I walked into the neuro rehab clinic with. I knew how to take somatic sensations and transform them. In PTSD field, we call it somatization of the pain. But it's frequently not referred to as chronic pain. But the reality is somebody has PTSD, 90% of people with PTSD have physical pain. You could call, and they've got it every day. Well, chronic pain is basically if you've had pain for 6 months, 9 months, or longer, and it floats around your body, and that emotional upset, thoughts, that's really chronic pain, and not only that, it's mind-based chronic pain.
I'd like to jump in because a lot of patients get so frustrated with their general practitioner or even their pain specialist who say, I think this is all in your head. This is, what's that term, the somatic term? It's
psychosomatic.
Psychosomatic. That's been used so frequently. And patients feel invalidated because, in fact, they do have pain and it is in their head, but it's being created through their brain into their body. And you have the bridge of how to solve what's going on in the head so it doesn't give the pain message to the body.
You're really right. And for the patient, for the client, it's this feeling of being invalidated and patronized and told that they're just faking it. But the reality is that the brain scans have changed that completely for us, because we actually see in an MRI, we see the brain is firing when somebody says that they're feeling chronic pain. But if it's low back pain, it's not firing in the area associated with the back.
Oh, where is it
firing in the area associated with story making. So my thing is that you can't use surgery, you can't use pharmaceuticals, you can't use physical interventions to rewrite stories. They're very poor authors of new stories. Mm-hmm. And the person has to identify, release, and repattern their story. And so that's what the tools that, so there's all of the PTSD tools were really about helping people to rewrite the story. That's where when we talked about people, the meaning. You know, when you give a new story, what's the story? If it's a negative story, negative stories cause suffering and contribute to pain. Positive stories lower the pain firing in the brain and also rewrite the old story of pain.
Could you say that this is self-hypnosis in a way?
Yeah. There isn't a sixth grade teacher who isn't a master at hypnosis with her classroom. You know, hypnosis is something that we all do.
Yes, inherently.
Inherently, if you're a good artist, if you're a good parent, you're able to get people into a relaxed state where you're vulnerable to suggestion. And a relaxed state where you're vulnerable to suggestion can be used in negative ways or it can be used in positive ways. But the deeper relaxed you are, the more vulnerable you are to suggestion. And you can do self-hypnosis or self-relaxation and self-suggestion.
Is that part of your protocol with pain management?
Absolutely. I teach people how to use relaxation to go into a place where when they do a visualization, it actually embeds, and it embeds deeply. Our other than conscious mind and that's really what hypnosis gets at, or self-hypnosis gets at, our other than conscious mind. And 90% of our processing is done in the other than conscious mind. I mean, it's a well-known fact that and I call it the other than conscious mind rather than the unconscious mind, because the last thing it is unconscious.
It is a different type of consciousness.
It's a different consciousness.
And Michael, you did an amazing sculpture that was a tribute to the sad child abuse. What did you call your monument?
It's the Reaching Out Child Abuse Monument. I worked on one piece of art, 70 to 90 hours a week, for 7 years on one piece of art. It's a miraculous piece of art.
And it's in your driveway in
It's
Toronto.
still in my driveway. I'm trying to donate it to someone. My next offer is to the University of Toronto. I'm hoping to get them to accept it. And that was another case where it was really fascinating because I worked with survivors across Canada where I took a cast of their hand and then had them do artwork. And there are 340 quilt panels on the monument, and we filled about 300 of them, and 40 of them were left plain because the top ones we were going to put the vitriol and the hate. But the reality is that all of the squares, that the people who've been through horrible stories, they were about altruism, compassion, wanting to be a witness or make a difference for other people. And that is, when you give meaning to your adversity, it's no longer suffering.
You free it.
And you free it and you rewrite it. We walk through an adversity saying, life is rotten and horrible. Or when you learn, you walk into a adversity. Doesn't mean adversities aren't tough, but you say, okay, what is the lesson that I'm going to learn? What's the opportunity? How am I going to stay positive? And I'm going to get through this. So that's the mindset of resiliency. And I think the two issues with chronic pain, actually there's three, is being positive and developing a positive mindset, identifying your suffering mindset and getting out of that, and then identifying resiliency and how are you going to be resilient. And that's changing the mindset. And then there's lots of mind-body tools that can help manage. And when you start using a mind-body tool, a visualization like you did with the jam and your pain, when you start doing that, the brain learns, I can change the pain, and it spontaneously does that. So then that's the mind-body connection. And then the other is just some really good story writing tool. So I've collected, I've condensed some very effective story writing tools where people use a simple writing exercise. I mean, absolutely simple writing exercise every day for 20 minutes, and it rewrites the story. Chris, are you there? Can you show the video that we have of Paul Toby? Yep. So Paul, Paul was in pain. I mean, I saw him in training conferences, and he would have two stools and would walk from one and hobble to the other. He couldn't sit in one for very. If you've got chronic pain, you can't sit for long. You've got to move around. And so one day during a break, I said to Paul, look, I can fix this for you. And so I literally spent 10 minutes with him. I knew he was a disciplined person. I knew he was a positive person, a resilient person. But I also knew he had chronic pain. And I knew he needed to rewrite the story. So I gave him an exercise. He did it for 20 minutes a day. In 2 weeks, his pain was reducing. In 1 month, the pain was gone. And I saw him recently. 3 years later, the pain has not returned. This is after having it every day for 7 years. And so I developed these writing exercises. Paul used that. I didn't have to do the mind stuff with it or the visualization because he knew those skills. But he didn't have the skills to identify, process, release, and repattern his story, the chronic pain story. So,
okay, so we got the video, so let's watch this, and then we'll come back and we'll...
Sure, let's shoot.
This
is Paul's story.
Okay.
This was a spontaneous... I was in an audience the next fall, and he just did this spontaneously.
Awesome. Here we go.
Chronic pain is what? Never stops. Every day, every minute, And I had chronic pain for like 3 years. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible time in my life. I had hip. I saw like 3 surgeons, 5 doctors, 3 MRIs. I did standing x-rays, sitting x-rays. They did bone scan, a nerve conduction test where they took needles this freaking long and they stuck them in my leg and they shocked me to see how well the whole thing was working. I was in freaking pain for 3 years. That man fixed it. Would you like to know how? It's not a physical exercise. Couldn't stand. How the hell are you supposed to do physical exercise? I just followed his instructions to the T. I did it every day, faithfully. It took 20 minutes a day. I didn't believe it would work, but guess what? I walked across Spain this summer, 1 month after doing that exercise.
Back, Chris. We're good? Okay, I guess we're back.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so after Paul did that spontaneous compliment to me while I was in a business audience, he and his wife Nancy said, like many of the patients that I was seeing at the neuro rehab clinic, you have to write this down. You have to share this with people. And it was really Paul's and Nancy, his wife's passion that led to the writing of this book. And the book's coming out this month. My website is chronicpaincenter.com. You can fill out, you can link to there's a picture of the book. You link to that and give me your address and I'll put you on the notice for when the book comes out.
Okay.
And this basically is what I did with Paul, and what Paul said, this you need to share with other people. There are so many, there's 100 million North Americans that are suffering with chronic pain.
Well, and look at the prescription rates for
opioid
all that stuff.
Oxycodone and all of that stuff.
It's a huge problem, a huge addiction problem. So I just want to ask you, though, because especially, well, first of all, obviously, for something like phantom limb pain, going back to the war examples, right?
Yeah.
This is the prescription for that, right?
You know, that's part of the brain base. Is the limb is gone and yet you're feeling pain in it. Where is that happening?
It's got to be happening in the brain.
It's in the brain. Yes.
So
it's about 80%. About 80% of chronic pain is brain based or mind based.
No, but I do have to ask you about lower back pain, which I suffer from periodically. Because isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to say that it's all in the head, or that I'm reliving. It's a story, right?
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes a part of the body is going to get maybe suffer from some long-term permanent damage.
Yeah.
That
absolutely.
is, you know, like, is that a different scenario, or can
is
you
it?
still
Well,
reduce
there's two
that?
parts. There's two parts of that. One is that there's injury or structure-based pain. Okay. And the degree to which you suffer can be changed by your mindset and can be changed by what you do about it. If you've got a long-term injury, you can have the injury, and that's part of your pain, and then you can develop mind-based pain. So then you have the mind-based component of the pain as well as the physical injury base. So some things, there is an injury. If it comes and goes, if it migrates about the body, if thoughts change it, if an upset, if you get a letter from Revenue Canada and your lower back pain is raised that night, well, guess what?
Because they say that lower back pain is related to financial issues.
About 80% of people with low back pain have at least a degree, if not full-blown mind-based or brain-based pain.
Really?
And the thing is it's not going to hurt you to rewrite the story. You'll at least reduce some of it, and you'll get control of it. As you're saying with the doctors, the whole side effects to medicines and opioids and all of that can be really terrible. And with trying to retrain your brain, at least you're going to learn different ways of being more positive in your life. If you can erase chronic pain, other areas of your life will improve. And as you said with the doctors, to a person, almost every doctor that I'm speaking with these days, they tell me an example of some patients, and they know what's in their head. But what they say to me is, I haven't had anything that I can do about that. I know that it's in their mind, but what can I do? And now what we know is that you can retrain the brain, you can retrain the story, you can change the attitudes and the beliefs, and then you can build a positive personality, and you can learn mind-body tools, the mind-body connection that can change it. Some of these skills, I mean, when you get a filling, when you get tooth work, part of the pain is the drill itself doesn't cause pain when it's on grinding on the tooth, but everybody's like freaking out. And so I literally went in and I got a root canal done, and I used, as you're saying, the self-hypnosis, deep trance, and went to a positive picture on the beach, and I used the mind-body connection. So I focused as much focus as I could on my toes and the feel of the sensations of the socks around my feet and the shoes and all that. So I took my attention rather than the mouth down to my feet. I got a root canal with no anesthesia. Now, I'm not suggesting that someone should do that, but because I do this training with people all of the time, I've learned to do it really well. And you don't need to do that. I mean, unless you don't want all of the needle, every time they stab the needle in another place, that's the pain that you're feeling 4 hours later.
The needle is what hurts.
Yeah. So if you can have mind-body tools. But there are other times, if you're carrying a bag, at 65 years old, I ran 5 marathons in 12 weeks.
Now, I was amazed when you told me that. What got you to do that, and why did you need to do so many marathons?
One is I just wanted to celebrate 65 and making it, getting through heart surgery and a stroke and everything else. And then part of it is just I had the skills. I've got these highly developed skills for mind-body connection, for pain management, and I tell you, I use those in a marathon for sure. You
also had a very special marathon that you did of gratitude. Can you talk about that a little bit? On
my 65th birthday, I had a heart attack about 6 years before. No, my heart attack was almost a decade previously. My open heart surgery was about 6 years before then. To celebrate 65, I was so glad that I got there, and so I went around to literally 60 places in the city of Toronto on a 42-kilometer marathon, and I went by the hospitals and the health food stores and the gyms and the psychotherapist clinic. I went by everywhere, and I dropped off a card that was the Gratitude Day Marathon. So I was grateful to be alive, and I mean, that was one of the easiest marathons that I did, because it was so filled with gratitude and so filled with meaning. And it was a fun, thrilling day. Now, a marathon's a tough thing. You know, they say you're ready to run your next marathon when you forgot your last one. And I think at 65, you know, a little bit of senility, you know, I was able to forget more quickly. You know?
Michael, would you say that just indirectly, without you even focusing on it, that gratitude itself is a pain manager?
Totally. One thing is that altruism and compassion and doing something for others helps one to heal and be more healthy. It also helps to reduce pain. One of my really, really bad pain clients who's doing this program, a horrible motorcycle accident she was in. This past month, she's been up in North Bay helping out in a nursing home, and this morning she just called me. I was putting my tie on and getting ready for here, trying to and I was listening to her story, and she was talking about how much that looking after others was helping to just make her pain disappear. And you're really right. You know, it's the positive thinking. For one of this whole decade of the brain is so exciting. If people look at pictures of somebody they love, they look at pictures of doing something good, and the brain scans show that fewer cells, in some cases, up to 95% fewer brain cells are firing. And the other thing is that there's
pain cells, you mean?
Pain
fewer
cells.
Pain cells.
Yeah, pain cells. Yeah, brain cells.
That could
put
be
yourself out.
Trouble.
That could be trouble.
Right.
That even things like oxytocin, vasopressin, there's a whole bunch of brain chemicals and proteins that are stimulated by positive thoughts, by doing something for others, or even thinking about doing something for others. So they, as you say, compassion, altruism makes one more relaxed. It also makes one feel less pain. And oddly, it makes the organs healthier. You know, people who do a lot of volunteer work live longer.
There's studies on that.
Studies on that have less disease. That's the mind-body connection, and that's really what the whole thing with pain is. Can you use the mind-body connection to reduce it, to manage it? And if it's an injury base, you can manage it significantly. Injury base was getting a root canal and not having pain. You know,
amazing.
And then the other is, if you've got an injury that you have to live with, like arthritis or something, having those mind-body tools can help you not suffer so much.
I've also learned that you can't focus on two things simultaneously. As much as there's this misnomer of we multitask, we never actually do things at the same time. We are sequentially, quickly doing things one after another, and we call that multitasking. And in the same way, we can't think of pain and think of a good story at the same time. We have to flip to one or the other.
That's the difference between the pain and the suffering. When I said there were 3 ways to get out of it, the one way is to change the story. What's the regret and dread? The other way is distraction. You can use distraction if distraction gets you out of pain, then get focused on doing whatever. And if it's a positive distraction, so you're playing music or listening to something, the mind can only absorb, can only be focused on so much at one time. And so focus on something that's good. And be in the present. The more you're in the present, that part of the pain that's attached to regret and dread, that part, you're further away from it the further you're in the present.
Can I share a very brief story with you that is in keeping with everything you've said? Last week I lost my great dog, Ito, my Pomeranian, therapy dog to many, 16 years of age. And I was dreading, as it was approaching his later years, oh my gosh, how am I going to live without this beautiful best friend? But what occurred was the gratitude of having had him and looking at his pictures have brought me joy as opposed to, I don't want to see him because it's going to bring back memories. It actually celebrated him, and I haven't cried that much yet. I don't think I'm in denial of his death. I'm actually in the positive celebration, and I'm not feeling physical, mental, or emotional pain over it. And I think friends think I'm in denial, but I'm actually in celebration. It's
so true. When you walk into an adversity, first thing you've got to do is say to yourself, I'm going to get through this. And the other is how can I be positive, and what is the purpose and meaning that I can find? What's the opportunities that I can find in this? And that's the model of resiliency. And there are some people that are resilient, and there are people that aren't resilient, and what we know is you can be taught resiliency.
And that's in the book, right?
And that's
right here.
Retrain your brain
this book
to end chronic pain by Dr. Michael Irving.
Yeah. The book is amazing. It's been such a pleasure to do it because as I'm working and I'm getting to think back of all the people that I helped and all the people that it's going to help. Yeah. And this book has just been so warm and fulfilling to write. It has a lot of work to write a book.
So that's going to, this sounds like a kind of book for everybody. Laura, you just described another kind of pain.
Emotional pain.
That this book can help people get through. And I'm even thinking of situations like maybe you're in a bad job, right? You can not suffer as much by just using some of the techniques in the book.
Yeah, this book is about retraining not just for chronic pain, but for all issues of, as you say, emotional pain or adversity. How do you change your mindset?
Yeah.
How do you rewrite the story? And what are some mind-body tools? The mind-body tools in this for changing pain, you can use for getting over a cold or dealing with a chronic illness. Wow. You can also deal with getting over a loss, as you're saying, a loss, or having your tree fall on your roof because of a
maybe on your roof, but maybe not on your head.
Well, not on your head. Yeah, one of the early stories that really taught me about resilience. This goes back years. I'm watching this news story, maybe even pre-CNN, and there's this woman in Malibu, and there's this hurricane, and it's absolutely smashing the coast, and there are these movie star mansions that are being washed in, and typical Californian. This guy's really excited, and the interviewer says to this guy, why are you so excited? And he says, that's my house there. He says, but look at those storms. And he says, this is the greatest place in the world for me to live, but I've never been able to rebuild the house. I'm not going to leave here, and I can't rip the house down, but now I get to change my house. So this was an adversity he knew he was going to get through. Now, I'm sure over the next 2 years there was going to be a record album, or there was going to be some photos. There was going to be some loss. But there's also, I'm going to get through it, and what's the opportunity? The opportunity is now I can build my dream home. And that changed the experience.
It's part of the process of reframing it and just getting over it. And
I assure you that if you've got chronic pain, the opportunity is that you're going to learn a whole lot about changing your mind if you fix your chronic pain, and those skills can be used in other areas. And that's the opportunity.
Okay, great. So people can sign up right now to get notified when the book is actually out. It may be out if people are watching this. The book is probably already out. So they go to the website, right, Michael?
chronicpaincenter.com.
And that's with an ER at the end of center, right?
Oh, it can be Canadian or American.
Either way.
Yeah, we're inclusive.
So we don't even have to bring that up.
Yeah.
chronicpaincenter.com, and there's a picture of the book, and people can click on that and sign up.
Yeah.
Great.
And it's my pleasure. I hope that when you read the book that I'm sitting there with you, and that you can really look forward to some great things happening in your life.
Awesome. Well, great to have you back on the show.
Pleasure to be here. I see the show that we did every now and then on The Heart. Yeah. And I really like seeing you two guys. You guys work really well together.
See, Laura?
It's a great interview, wasn't it? But he's a terrific
And the hat
man.
is always there. I'm glad the hat is there today.
Well, thanks. Thank you. And I've seen your sculpture in front of your house, and it is awesome. And yeah, it should be seen. It's a very powerful piece. So people can even see it on Google Earth.
We could do a show in the future, maybe.
Well, you're going to do a show
about the monument.
Well, we could.
Let's do that.
Plus, you mentioned you might do a show yourself.
I'm gonna. Yeah, I've been thinking about it all spring, and today I got inspired. I got inspired, and I'm looking at doing a regular show with you guys out of the chronic pain zone. Changing. the story.
That would be awesome. So we'll all work on that. We're talking about that.
Yeah.
So thanks again. We're gonna say that don't go away because we got Leah Morgan coming up right after this, and then coming up later we're gonna get some John Lennon.
Channeled Lennon.
Channeled John Lennon.
Wow.
I'm going to ask him about the Paul McCartney thing, you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Okay, we'll be right back. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
That channel.com.